America. We are the walking wounded. We are the walking wounded here at Status Coup. I think I might have struck a nerve in my shoulder, if nerves are there. I can barely move my arm, so that's positive. Steve, I know you're tired and lacking sleep, and uh, I'm a little down, Steve, because what quite possibly could have become the most viral interview in Status Quo history that was supposed to happen this evening is now having to be rescheduled. Do you want to know what that is?
Yes.
So, if you don't know, the Trumpers are gathering in my alma mater of Long Island tonight. Donald Trump, fresh off his latest assassination attempt, is speaking at the Nassau Coliseum, 20 minutes from where I grew up. And I was going to wrangle my father to come down, who is a Trumper, to have a duel with him on camera, debate Israel. You know, he's a super Zionist. Debate Haitians eating dogs. He was looking forward. He's actually been begging me to come on. And I told him I don't want to lose half my audience with you coming on. But I finally said, fine, come down and we'll do it in person. But unfortunately, if you didn't see, the NYPD roughed up our cameraman last night. They seemed to be out of control. They shoved him, they pushed him, all these things. So I called John to confirm that we were going, and yeah, he sounded like didn't sound so good. So because I put other people first, I said, you know what, John, we'll skip it. You rest up. His body was sore, so we'll have to reschedule the older first younger Chariton on Chariton interview. It will happen, but it was not to be. Anyway, so yeah, I'm not on Long Island tonight for that, but better to be here. I guess we'll start with, I'm sure there will be movies about it. Because, they hid explosives and pagers and walkie-talkies, and it will be glorified. And I'm sure the violence and the innocents that were killed or wounded will be minimized. But I don't know how you describe this other than a terrorist attack 2 days in a row perpetrated by Israel. We'll start with the one yesterday, which involved pagers. Colin, whatever video you have, if you want to put up. But at least 26 people, including 2 children, were killed and thousands more injured. Many serious. Oh, so there you go. So that one's from today. So that was walkie-talkies, I believe, today, which follows yesterday detonating pagers. Yesterday, in front of me, as of now, it says 26 people died from yesterday's attack, and thousands, including 2 children, I should say. And thousands more were injured yesterday. And today, obviously, I'm sure this count will go up. But today, the count that I saw was, where was it? 14, I believe. Yes, 14 killed and hundreds more injured. And this was from a few hours ago, so it might be more than that. But 14 killed and hundreds injured in a secondary explosion, both in Lebanon, against what the media is reporting, Hezbollah. But these pagers and walkie-talkies were blown up all over the place in highly trafficked areas. So, I mean, at this point, you'd have to say thousands and thousands of injuries. And can only imagine if Russia or did this to Ukraine, what would be the media coverage? But it is being very, 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 it's being narrated very differently by the media here. And one description of that, just to show you, if you have that tweet, Colin, this is Asal Rad, who is a Middle Eastern historian. She tweeted, "Who's causing the explosions? Israel has carried out terror attacks across Lebanon for 2 days, and the media can't even bring themselves to mention Israel. and she shows multiple headlines: what to know about the 2 waves of deadly explosions that hit Lebanon and Syria. Another one: walkie-talkies explode in Lebanon day after deadly pager attack. Then the New York Times live updates: more wireless devices explode in Lebanon. And then you have Lebanon reels as more devices explode, casualties rise. It goes without saying that, to the apologists, they could say, well, there's going to be collateral damage in war. But most armies, not all, have some type of rules of engagement that do not find it acceptable to detonate explosives across the country, because, you don't know who's holding that pager or walkie-talkie. You don't know where it is. You don't know if children are around there. You don't know who's there. So clearly, the IDF, and frankly, these explosives, I don't know. My guess is we probably provide some of them. The U.S. I don't know how you describe this other than terrorist attacks.
Well, I saw some interesting conversation out there where apparently Israel intercepted shipments of these devices, did whatever they were going to do with them, and then kept sending them out on the rest of the way. But, just think about the chilling effect this has, right? I mean, you had lithium batteries as a common denominator. And if that's the case, look at all the other things that could have computers and lithium batteries in them that, God forbid someone decides to retaliate, or God forbid someone decides they've had enough of the US, or God forbid, just imagine the electric cars, imagine all the different brake systems, imagine computers and laptops, beyond pagers and walkie-talkies. I mean, there's so many ways that, I think this can have a very chilling effect going forward. I really do. I think this has the potential to be so much more. But just on its face, every one of those headlines, they refuse to call Israel, and Israel refuses to accept blame. It's not that they refused; they're just not even commenting on it. So I guess if they just pretend they didn't do it.
Just as an update, within the last couple hours, they did take responsibility for yesterday's.
Okay. Well, that I didn't hear. So thank you.
Yeah.
So, that's interesting to see that they finally stepped up to the plate and took, the idea that the US is the good guys here, and that, we're somehow or another above it all, when quote unquote our partner who we've been funding all this time does something despicable like this, and we stay silent on it largely. I mean, the latest is that Kamala is supporting Joe Biden's delaying of 2,000-pound bombs, and they're acting like somehow or another the US is distancing themselves from Israel. It's just hilarious. This is one of the most disgusting, actually frightening. This is more terrifying, I think, than almost any of the 2,000-pound bombs, because it just shows you there's nowhere you're safe. You could be on a subway, you could be in classroom, you could be at home bouncing your kid on your knee. Boom, done. Horrible.
Well, I'd also like to point out, because the devil's advocate, and my father would say, and other Zionists would say, well, I don't know the number, but tens of thousands, if not more, Israelis in the north of Israel have had to evacuate their homes since October 7th because Hezbollah has been firing rockets into Israel. Whatever you want to say about that, do you think detonating explosives all over Lebanon to go after Hezbollah and killing thousands of people is going to expedite those people returning to their homes in Israel? Or do you think this might create a broader war? I think it's going to create a broader war.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what the Dick Cheney of Israel, Netanyahu, who our cowardly, meek, feeble president doesn't seem to have the stamina or will to stand up to. Again, I hate to do it, but you got to credit Ronald Reagan on this one thing. He picked up the phone in 1982 and he told Menachem Begin, the prime minister of Israel, no more. We're not funding this anymore. And that was Beirut too. Israel was bombing Beirut in Lebanon. So, I mean, you don't just detonate explosives all over Lebanon and kill at this point, the numbers will change, but a couple dozen people, but injure thousands and expect no response. And we're not just talking about the response from Hezbollah, a response from allies of Hezbollah. So to me, I don't, the media reports this, going after Hezbollah. It seems to me the effort here is to launch a broader war and pull the United States in.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's no question. I don't think it's a matter of pulling the United States in. I think the U.S. is already kind of in, even if they don't do, a full here, let's go ahead and send an aircraft. Oh, wait a minute. They already sent an aircraft carrier out there, didn't they? So, I mean, like, I don't think that it feels weird. It feels like every day there's some new thing coming out, and every day people are screaming, yelling about it. And every day they're like, I don't give a fuck. We're going to keep doing it. We're going to do whatever we feel like doing. Somebody tell me where I can go to vote against this. Can somebody fucking tell me where a ballot box is that I can go put the I just voted sticker on my forehead like the rest of the fools out there that think they're doing something. And so I can vote this to stop. Can somebody show me where a ballot box is that has this so I can vote on it? Because our democracy is at stake here, right? Isn't it? I mean, what the fuck, man? It's just ridiculous.
And let me also show you, this is a tweet from an Israeli MP. So I guess that's their version of a congressperson. It's in Hebrew, but there's a translate option. I'll read you the translate. Activating explosive devices in crowded places is an act of terrorism by any accepted definition. And it doesn't matter who is responsible for it. The IDF, Hamas, the CIA, or the Mossad. So that's an Israeli politician, definitely more to the left, but pointing out the obvious, blowing shit up in crowded places is an act of terrorism. And by the way, if you know your history, when Israel, with the help of the United States and some others, were trying to track down the last remaining Nazis, like high-ranking Nazis, they were trying to do similar things. I mean, they didn't have pagers and things like that back then, but they were trying to, put explosives in phones, where the Nazis, where they were suspected to be. And there was actually care taken to, make sure nobody else was in. That, children weren't in the home, or it wasn't in a crowded market, that there would be a limited risk of casualties. Clearly, that's not the case here. And it's being glorified. I mean, I saw a clip on CNN where the guy was like twisting himself into a pretzel, basically saying like, yeah, well, this is kind of not aligned with law, but, Colin, do we have that?
To be able to introduce items such as pagers and two-way radios that could function as GPS trackers, providing signals intelligence on conversations, literally allow whomever had sponsored this to wire, track, and map every facility, every individual for strategic value, and yet using it for this purpose makes one wonder what ultimately was sought as the strategic objective.
Well, so let's talk about what may have been sought, because the effect of this is that there must be a lot of paranoia. And we know that the head of Hezbollah, Hassan Nasrallah, just a few months ago, had told operatives in the terrorist group that their cell phones were collaborators with Israel, that they should take their cell phones, the phones of their wives, of their kids, lock them up, bury them, put them in an iron chest. He was pretty paranoid about cell phones, and this seemed to funnel operatives into using these pagers and more rudimentary communications tools. What do you think the effect is on how they, one, are communicating, and two, operatives are seeing the guidance of their leadership?
It's profoundly disruptive, and that's certainly a success. When Israel assassinated Fouad Shukra, who also somebody the United States was very much after for his role in the attacks in Beirut against our embassy and the Marine barracks in 19. Again, as every hour passes, Hezbollah is going to harden its defensive, be more reactive, and make it much more difficult for whomever was behind it to stage any other sort of operation and attack on their supply chain for greater strategic value.
Douglas, you mentioned the potentially indiscriminate nature of this because these attacks were near simultaneous. And we've seen videos, right, of people in markets. One in particular, after you see a man near, I think it was like a fruit stand inside of a grocery store, you then see a woman nearby picking up a small child. It's kind of arresting. You can see the impact that this is the one I'm talking about here. You'll see her pick up a small child right after this. Are U.S. officials, as an ally of Israel, okay with this? How do they see this?
The actions that you see being played out, the fact that civilians are being killed, the mere fact it's indiscriminate. The law of armed conflict, an international treaty to which we're all signees, in which guides all of our war fighting, if you would, requires target discrimination, proportionality, no human suffering. Basically, it has to be a valid military target. And whoever was behind this couldn't really be certain that the pager, the radio, whatever device was in the hands of a valid military target. It could be in a room. I've carried radios and pagers. A lot of time you leave them, you come home, they're around family members. So this doesn't necessarily align, obviously, with international law, but I don't.
So let's be clear. She said potentially indiscriminate. Yeah, it's just potentially indiscriminate to blow up pagers and walkie-talkies all over, the busiest city in the country, and requires target indiscrimination or discrimination, proportionality. And then he says, doesn't necessarily align with international law. Well, you don't say. Quite the understatement. I mean, this is some serious grade A whitewashing, like in a disturbing way.
I mean, this is truly terrifying. I mean, seriously, like the greatest form of what is it? Compliment is imitation is flattery, or flattery is whatever the fuck the saying is. But the idea that there won't be copycats, that this won't be done in the future the same way, differently, whatever, is preposterous. This is the kind of shit that becomes the new norm. And we're looking the other way. We would be all. Imagine if this had been done on U.S. soil. Imagine if they would be able to say it was Hamas or Hezbollah that did it. Imagine if they could say it was ISIS or Al Qaeda or something like that. I mean, we would be all over it with friggin' every ounce of the U.S. military. Boom, no problem at all. But Israel doing this stuff, and admittedly doing this stuff, I mean, I got to tell you, man, it isn't going to be long before there's a copycat, and then it starts amping up.
I'm glad you brought that up because you mentioned U.S. soil. I've been saying this for a while. I mean, again, this is not to defend whatsoever Osama bin Laden. Absolutely, there's no defense to what he did on 9/11. But this kind of creates a hatred, not just of Israel, but America, who's funding this. I mean, if you read bin Laden's memo, which the CIA and all the intelligence officials were freaking out. I think it was last year because it started surfacing on TikTok, and younger people had never really seen that. It cited, Israeli occupation as one of the top reasons for Al Qaeda's actions. What makes people think that there's not going to be attempts, not just on Israel, but America? And it won't just be pagers and it won't just be walkie-talkies. So besides the moral depravity of this, and, that's just some of the video. I'm sure there's worse that's surfacing around. Strategically, there is no, this has no, I think that guy was trying to say it, but without criticizing Israel. There is no actual strategic end here. I don't care how many Hezbollah people you kill. They're going to be replaced, and the bullseye is going to be on Israel further and America. And I think, world opinion, which for the most part has always been either ambivalent or disregarded Israel's crimes or supported Israel, it's going to turn further and further against Israel. But I don't really know. I mean, again, this will be glorified. To be clear, there will be a Hollywood movie about this one day. that's basically in a sympathetic and adoring way. Oh, look at the creative process, how they did this, how long it took them to mastermind the plan, this and that. And it will minimize the casualties, or will make it think like, most of the innocent people that died were terrorists or something like that. It'll be whitewashed. But I find it truly, I don't even like, even Chris Hayes on MSNBC at some points has kind of sort of criticized Israel. I don't really know how this could be covered with a straight face, other than if any other country did this other than Israel, we'd be condemning it.
Jordan, I'm just going to say this straight. You and I are both fathers. If someone hurt our children, someone threatened our children, the idea that we would just suddenly be passive and be like, these things happen, we have to be forgiving. That's ridiculous. The idea that people fighting back against oppression, against nonstop, colonization and settlements, against taking their homes, against bulldozing them, against the apartheid state, against the brutality since 1948, the idea that we can judge their response to any of that, to me, is a bridge too far. Like, I don't even feel the need to condemn them for fighting back. It's not to say that it's good or whatever. I just know me, myself. If someone hurt my child, the level of find outs, the fuck around and find outs, would be at a level that it would be biblical. And I can tell you, I'm for real. I don't think it's a stretch to think that these folks out there are saying, this is going to be biblical. I'm not going to sit by while they do this shit. I'll find a way. I don't care. I'll launch rockets wherever. I'll take hostages. I'll do whatever. You're not getting away with this. And then, unfortunately, we'll hear the crying crocodile tears of the people that supported this pager massacre. And we'll be feeling so sorry for them based on the way the news slants it. But I'm here and telling you, I will never judge someone that's in that oppressed state for the amount of fight back they put, no matter who or what they do. I just can't, because I can put myself, I am able to dialectically put myself in that position and consider what it would feel like, what my mind would be like, how I would operate in that. I mean, would you just be passive and be like, shit happens. Shit happens.
Right.
What are you going to do about it?
It's human nature. It's absolutely human nature.
You're creating terrorists, if you want to call them terrorists. I call them freedom fighters.
I also want to bring back, I hate to bring the election into this, but I don't know how we don't react to this clip. Kamala Harris is going on her hot air balloon tour of substanceless drivel. And I guess it was with the National Association of Black Journalists. So she sat down with them. I'm not even going to bother playing her answer on reparations and a commission on reparations, because she didn't answer. But she was asked about Israel, Gaza, and her answer is just, I don't really know if there's words to describe it. Colin, if you could play, I think it's only 15 seconds.
Well, one of the things that we have done that I am entirely supportive of is the pause that we've put on the 2,000-pound bombs. And so there is some leverage that we have had and used.
I'm sorry. We got to play that again, just so it sinks in. One more time.
Well, one of the things that we have done that I am entirely supportive of is the pause that we've put on the 2,000-pound bombs. And so there is some leverage that we have had and used.
Translated, I'm really proud that we are removing AR-15s from the shop. They're too big and deadly, but we're going to still, we'll still provide all of the add-ons to regular guns that make, allow just as many people to die just through add-ons to the guns. So we're putting a pause on AR-15s, but here's all the other add-ons so that you could shoot 100 rounds in, a minute. I mean, the depravity, she's proud that we're not giving the 2,000 bombs. We're just going to give a shit ton more 500-pound bombs.
Can you do me a favor, Colin? I put it in the private chat. Can you? Yeah, exactly. Folks, if you're not following Jason Hickel already.
To be clear, this is not Jackson Hinkle. Don't get it confused. Jason Hickel.
Jason Hickel is a South African anthropologist who is a brilliant economic mind, and he's also a 100% fighting for all the right things. The man is a hero of mine, and he's one of the few academics out there who unapologetically says what needs to be said. And you'll see a bunch of sycophantic academics in this country suckling into the Mr. President and Kamala, blah, 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 Kamala, blah, blah, blah. Jason Hickel, the narrative that the U.S. is pushing for a ceasefire and working to prevent a wider conflict is so farcical, it's obscene. The U.S. continues to send massive quantities of weapons to Israel so they can carry on a genocide while they actively agitating for a regional war. Folks, I mean, that's the real truth right there. That is it right there. Forget everything else you heard. That right there is the straight fucking truth. And I'm beyond sick of the vote blue sycophant that if Kamala comes on there all nasally and says, oh, I'm all about blocking the 2,000-pound bombs for a month or so or whatever. If that sells you, if that's the kind of shit that grabs you, can I interest you in some, swampland? Maybe you can build a house on it. I mean, they are the biggest crock of shit. And it's embarrassing. Like, I didn't realize how embarrassing my government was until really Donald Trump kind of era. But this Biden-Harris era is like saying, Trump, hold my beer. I mean, the stuff that they're putting out is so ridiculous. It's unbelievable.
There's another thing I want to point out. Colin, since it's a short clip, just play it one more time. I want to point this out. Yeah, maybe he went to the bathroom. Did you notice that she said, so clearly, we have some leverage to exert? Oh.
Done that I am entirely supportive of is the pause that we've put on the 2,000-pound bombs. And so there is some leverage that we have had and used. But
so I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong. You're the one providing all the bombs and all the money, so you have all the leverage. So when you say clearly there's some leverage, what does that mean? You're not allowing them to drop the nuke, but you're allowing them to just drop all the drones. I mean, you're still sponsoring mass slaughter. So how are they exercising leverage if they're just yanking, I guess, the most lethal weapon? I don't understand that.
They're full of shit is what they are. I mean, dude, listen, every time you think about why would they even be leveraging? Think about it. Why would they even be leveraging anything? Because Israel's just defending itself, remember? I support Israel's right to defend. Isn't that all that they've been saying over and over? Hamas, and I love they add the extra K just to sort of be like, whatever. I mean, I'm sure there's a reason for it, the spelling or whatever. But the point is that it's like, do you condemn Hamas? Yes, of course. Do you condemn Hamas? It's always this shit. And now it's like, well, we've got a little bit of leverage here. Oh, I got a little bit of leverage here. The fact that she is that passe on genocide right now, there's no question that K-Hive understands exactly, Girl Boss understands 100% that Israel used the beepers today too, the pagers, etc. She knows all that shit. Like this, every time I hear her speak and act blasé about this, like there's not a genocide going on, and acting like, you got a little bit of leverage. That's who you want running the fucking country? Not that you already know they're not running the country. I mean, who was running the country while Joe Biden was trying to tie his shoes? Who was running the country as Joe Biden stared at the wall, drooling? I mean, like literally every time somebody has to point him in the right direction to move on stage, who's running the country then? You know, it in them. But they get up there as a prop for the fucking people that are running it. And they sit there, we got some leverage here. Some leverage. The idea that you're being bought, people buy that shit. I see it everywhere. Some idiot with a fucking Kamala in a Rocky Balboa boxing outfit with Trump laying fat boy down on the ground. I mean, these people buy this shit like fucking. I can't even say what it's like. It's horrible. It's wacko. But there she is telling people, deny your lying eyes. There's no genocide. We've inserted some leverage. Got and bombs.
And if you want to talk about somebody that actually has no leverage, or doesn't know how to use leverage, before we move off this topic, Bernie, good old Bernie, preparing resolution to block $20 billion in U.S. arms sales to Israel. Hey, Bernie, a better way of going about it was to tell Biden, I'm not going to endorse you if you don't pull back. Because Biden wanted his endorsement. Now, I'm not going to call him a sellout and, go on the Jimmy Dore train. I won't. But this man just doesn't know how to exert power or chooses not to. Maybe both. Senator Bernie Sanders preparing several resolutions that would stop more than $20 billion in U.S. arms sales to Israel, a long shot effort, but the most substantive pushback yet from Congress over the devastation in Gaza. In a letter to Senate colleagues on Wednesday, Sanders said the U.S. cannot be complicit in this humanitarian disaster. The action would force an eventual vote. So obviously he knows this vote is going into the toilet. It will go down in flames. But I could have thought of, a better way to publicly, try to put a stop to this. And that would be to say, before Biden dropped out, say, my endorsement, I'm going to have to see a significant change in policy from the president. We cannot be providing any more weapons to offensive actions, not defensive actions. So, more symbolism. I think his heart's in the right place, but he knows it's theater. He knows it's not going to go anywhere. Obviously, you feel stronger than I on that.
I really do. I mean, look, Bernie from day one, every chance he gets to really, truly, truly take a stand and do something meaningful, tucks tail and falls back into the establishment every single time. He had the win. I mean, we don't need to go through revisionist history about his election runs, but we have known huge swaths of people desperately wanted Bernie Sanders and all the programs and policies that they thought would save their own lives. They wanted him in power to do that. And the man literally looked at him and basically said, vote for her, vote for Hillary Clinton. Yeah, she's my good friend, Hillary Clinton, and my other good friend, Joe Biden, Jolton Joe Biden. It's anything he says after that, I'm unable to hear him properly. Maybe I hear him exactly the way I'm supposed to hear him now, which is not at all. But when I see that, I just say to myself, where were you, Bernie? Where were you again? And it doesn't make sense. And you see AOC spending all her time. She's such a warrior against the genocide that she's busy, kicking Jill Stein instead of freaking, kicking this thing with Israel. So I don't want to hear it from them anymore. They're there to distract and to absolve any kind of responsibility and to basically make everybody that was willing to fight back look like an asshole that isn't practical, isn't pragmatic, isn't just going to fall in line. And fuck that. I'm tired of being told I'm wrong by people that I know clearly are wrong. And I wonder what their motives are. What is your motive, Bernie Sanders? What is your motive, AOC? Why are you doing this? I think I have my own ideas, but fair question. Why the fuck are you doing it? So that's where I'm at, man. Sorry. I don't mean to. I'm not trying to be a dick, right? The fact of the matter,
people are dying. People are dying. And
I am absolutely sick and tired of being sold down the river by these fucking establishment sellouts. And they are a fucking sellout. Bernie had the wind at his motherfucking back. He could have kept it together even. But instead, he got a bunch of sycophants running, all the other little shitty R revolutions. They're running around basically singing the establishment tune. What revolution is there doing the thing? What? Show me a motherfucking revolution. I'm there for it. That ain't it. I just
Dre says there's a huge difference between being a voice of the people and a voice for the people. Couldn't agree more.
Yep.
And before I move on, remember, folks, we can only get out there and give voice to the people as far as you take us. I am right now starting to send out feelers to get back on the road to do a swing state reporting tour. Not a swing state reporting tour, thinking Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, maybe Arizona in the West. We're not going to go out there and be like, are you going to vote for Kamala or Trump or Jill or Cornell? No, we want to go out there and show you reality. We're about to talk about the economy and the next topic. We want to go out there and show you reality, the suffering going on in this great economy. So please, please, if you're not a Status Coup member, it takes a lot of resources to get out there and cover one state, much less 3 to 4 states. We want to go cover critical swing states, including Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and possibly Arizona and Nevada, too, if we could afford it. So please support us, statuscoup.com/join. Become a member for as low as 16 cents a day. That's $5 a month. Colin, we got to make the font bigger. I can't see that on the eye test. statuscoup.com/join. Too small, but statuscoup.com/join. Become a member. statuscoup.com/join. $5 a month you could support. And I'm thinking next week we'll do our monthly members call. I might make it a little book club members call to talk my book. I was happy last night. I was able to go on Glenn Greenwald's show as well as Mark Lamont Hill's show. So still doing interviews, still trying to get more interviews. So it's a long slog. I'm up against the presidential election, so it's not easy to get attention on the book, but really trying. And the audio version, if you like listening to books, will be out on September 27th. So the audio of my book, not narrated by me, that maybe I'll have to do a special narration for members, hint, hint. But the audio version out on September 27th. Steve, let's get into your wheelhouse here. Jerome Powell, the Federal Reserve Chair, came out today to announce that the Federal Reserve, after 4 years, is finally cutting interest rates by 0.5 point. The media is declaring mission accomplished. The media is saying that this shows that the interest rate hikes did its job to tame inflation, lower inflation, and now we could lower interest rates, which obviously would mean lower borrowing costs. I'm not going to get into the microeconomics of it, but to me, the bottom line is this is just more bullshit because there's permanent inflation. It's called gentrification. The rent is too damn high still. Housing is still too damn high. Yes, gas is down, but that could change in a day, particularly if there's a war that breaks out throughout the Middle East. And grocery prices are still too high. So key areas in pricing are still very, very high. And I'm not seeing massive surges in wages that would cancel out those higher costs. But somehow the Federal Reserve is now cutting interest rates, which I don't think is a bad thing. But it's all, to me, smoke and mirrors because they're cutting interest rates under the false branding that the economy is doing much better.
Well, they're also lowering interest rates on the false idea that raising interest rates drops inflation. The idea here is by raising interest rates, what they've done is they've raised the price of credit. They've seen no demonstrable lack of demand being executed. So it's not like it stopped people from buying what they needed to buy. They just had to buy it on credit at a higher price. So this is what creates inflation. That and the very, very real signaling, market signaling to industry that has been called out. And, I hate to give her an ounce of credit, but the idea of that whole, price gouging thing is real. I've said that for a long time, a lot longer than anybody thought about it. We've been talking about that since the pandemic, that these folks, once they get the signaling from industry, from the Fed and so forth, that they're spending money, they're printing money for the slow, they're printing money, right? Once they give that signal, the industries were raising prices, et cetera. So this has nothing to do with raising interest rates. Raising interest rates just raises the cost of credit. But it's also a handout. So it's new money infusion into the rich. So that's why you see all these stock portfolios blowing up and so forth. But by cutting it a half point, that is a big step, because usually they drop that thing by about a quarter point. Okay. Dropping it a half point is an indication, I think, that they have created too much of a stall on job growth. Job growth has slowed bigly, and they know it. And the problem with job growth slowing is that unless there's something to keep it going, it can start a catalyzing effect to roll down. And by eliminating new money into the economy, half interest point is a lot. That's billions of dollars into the economy that will not be spent. Okay. All to the rich, mind you, and to the stockholders, bondholders.
Explain that for the audience. How is that billions of dollars into the economy that won't be spent?
If I own stock or bonds, okay, and they start selling bonds at higher interest rates, and they're going to pay out at higher interest rates, okay, all that money that is paid on bond interest is brand new money by the government. They understand what they're suggesting that bond will yield, and they go ahead and pre-fund that money, and that money is brand new money spent into the economy straight to those who already have money, who are earning money from interest rates, right? The poor, who are the ones that really end up with the shitty interest rates to begin with, that are really screwed by the credit side of this, they pay more. And it's basically a right hand to left hand payment from the poor to the rich through interest rate hikes. So this has always been an incredibly, fucked up way of trying to mess with the economy. But the intent of raising interest rates was to get people to be laid off, to make it harder for people to exact their need and demand. And by doing that, they would slow the economy down. But it doesn't work that way. They would have had to raise it 25% like they did under Volcker. They would have needed to kill the economy to do it. Otherwise, people are just going to keep going on. They'll make some different changes, but people are getting that infusion. Enough people are getting an infusion of cash, while enough people are starving at the bottom, that it gives a false positive, because it's measured in aggregate. Instead of through stratification, looking at individuals, it's looking at the whole. And when the big rich people are doing great, it completely washes away the impact when they look at those numbers on the poor. So by cutting it a half percentage point, there's going to be less money spent into the economy through the interest income channel, but it's also going to be lower credit costs for average borrowers. So there's a yin and a yang there. But the idea here, I believe the reason why they're doing that, the primary reason why they're doing that, is because they've seen the numbers of the job growth shrinking. And to stave off us going into recession, their idea would be to lower the cost of credit.
But at the end of the day, because we
eyes
could get
glazing over,
no, it is in the weeds, but it's important. But at the end of the day, none of this shit addresses the root problem, and the root problem is what defines the strong economy. Because what defines a strong economy to Jerome Powell, or CNN anchors, or CNBC anchors, or New York Times columnists, does not actually meet the reality for actual living, breathing Jane and Joe worker bee.
Well,
now,
it's class war, Jordan. It's class war. It's 100% given the story from the rich, telling it from the moneyed class, the moneyed interest, the donors, etc. It's making news stories and telling the way it is from their perspective. It's a great economy. What the hell are you bitching about? Of course, it's wonderful. Look at this, right? But if you talk to Main Street, which you have done many times, Main Street's fucking suffering.
Right.
Sorry, it's boring, but it's real.
Well, it's important. So
it is very important.
The other thing is, we're now on year 15 that the federal minimum wage has not been increased. It's still $7.25. Even in places like Seattle and so many other places that got a raise to $15 an hour, it doesn't go as far as it did when it came in at the $15, because rent is going up so high, and electric bills and housing. And if you're buying if you bought a house recently, my friend just bought a house. There was over 6% interest rate. So, the structural levers, putting aside inflation, where minimum wage, housing, groceries, price gouging, this doesn't address any of it. None of it. maybe housing a little bit because it'll be lower. It will be cheaper interest rates. But if you can't get a higher minimum wage, or you still got to work 2 or 3 jobs, or they're cutting full-time jobs more and more to make it freelance, and AI and all this stuff is cutting jobs. You kind of have what we have talked about often, which is an economic Hunger Games. And Kamala Harris can talk about all she wants. Here's a Washington Post article headline: Kamala Harris wants to try something new, middle-class capitalism. Yeah. Middle-class capitalism. And if you want to know what she's going to do, here's more empty bullshit rhetoric. I mean, say what you want about Trump. We know what he's going to do, and it's bad. The tax cuts for the rich, tax cuts for corporations, tax cuts for himself, deregulation. We know what he's going to do on abortion and immigration and all those. It's bad. Kamala Harris, we don't know what she's going to do because she's just trying to fake her way through this. Colin, let's play that. She did an interview with a local person, a local reporter, and this is why she's not doing many interviews, because there's no there. I'd rather deal with someone where I know he's going to do bad shit than have to guess what someone's going to do. Because again, the most dangerous type of politician or anyone is someone who doesn't have a true core belief, because they are much more flexible if they don't have an agenda. You better watch out who they're putting around them, because it's going to be who they're putting around them's agenda. Let's play that clip, Colin.
When we talk about bringing down prices and making life more affordable for people, what are 1 or 2 specific things you have in mind for that?
Well, I'll start with this. I grew up a middle-class kid. My mother raised my sister and me. She worked very hard. She was able to finally save up enough money to buy our first house when I was a teenager. I grew up in a community of hardworking people, construction workers and nurses and teachers. And I try to explain to some people who may not have had the same experience, but a lot of people will relate to this. I grew up in a neighborhood of folks who were very proud of their lawn, and I was raised to believe and to know that all people deserve dignity, and that we as Americans have a beautiful character. We have ambitions and aspirations and dreams, but not everyone necessarily has access to the resources that can help them fuel those dreams and ambitions. So when I talk about building an opportunity economy, it is very much with the mind of investing in the ambitions and aspirations and the incredible work ethic of the American people, and creating opportunity for people, for example, to start a small business.
Well, I'll be damned. George.
What are you going to do to lower prices? Well, about those lawns, I mean, what is she even saying?
What did I just hear? Do you know there's people out there who are celebrating her like she's like girl boss? I'm not even joking. People actually fucking say, I can't wait to vote for Kamala, top cop. What the fuck? That was word salad extraordinaire, and it was really bad word salad. I mean, the idea that, hey, middle-class people, I'm going to invest in your hopes and dreams. Okay.
Colin, come in here for a second. Come here for a second with your cameraless attendants. So not to blow up your spot, but you and your wife have been trying to get a house in recent years. You've had to you moved around quite a bit, but your goal is to get a house that you can afford. So she was asked, how are you going to lower prices? She's been asked about the housing crisis, prices. Does that answer as a voter? I'm not asking you who you're voting for, but as a voter, does that give you any purview into how she's going to make it easier for you and your wife to buy a house or lower prices or anything?
Not that I couldn't even, I feel like she even had trouble thinking of where each thought was going to end. So she kept bailing at each thought and going to a different one. So I couldn't even follow it. So I don't know if I have a lot of hope. makes for some interesting television if she's elected of what few interviews she'll do.
And the worst part about it, opportunity economy, middle class, this is all poll tested, consultant fed drivel. I'm sure, I mean, God knows how much of that money going into her campaign is being spent on these consultants to just feed her these phrases. Now, this is not an endorsement of Trump. He's not going to do anything for Colin or anyone.
You shouldn't have to say that.
I know, but I know, but I don't want people to take it that I'm supporting Trump. But the point is, the guy, rightly so, I didn't see the whole interview, but I doubt he actually followed up and challenged her. He's just asking, can you give me 2 specifics? Because her ads on TV, and I've seen them say, we're going to lower grocery. How? Well, I grew up where people really, really valued at what their lawns look like. I mean, good God, this makes, Mitt Romney was a flip-flopper, but at least he had a few policies. It's just heinous. And I feel bad where things are going because we already live in a gilded age and it's just going to get worse. It'll just be a kinder, more woke gilded age.
But when I hear that, though, I want to say this. Years ago, I did a video called It's Expensive Being Poor. And I talked about how local police end up literally getting all their funds, raping and pillaging the poor. Fines, fees, penalties, things like that, higher interest rates for purchases because of bad credit. I mean, every step along the way, it's expensive being poor. That is right there the most important thing that we could deal with, because money, what happens with money, folks? If you're poor and you have $10, what do? You go to the store and you buy food. You try to take care of your teeth. Maybe you buy some toothpaste, but ultimately you're spending that money because you don't have enough money to save. Everything that comes through the door has got to be used strategically for a survival element in your life. It's nothing about saving for a rainy fucking day. It's about literally survival. But that money, once you spend it, goes to someone who owns a business. And they, in turn, give it up to someone else who has an even bigger business, all the suppliers. And so that money always ends up, after time, it ends up in some rich fucker's hands, okay? The idea of focusing in the middle and pretending the bottom doesn't exist, because the intention is not to create an economy for all. The intention is to widen the whole gap, and nothing but the gap between the poor and the wealthy. Because how do we measure ourselves? They measure themselves by how much shit they have, how many toys they have, how much better their life is, because they have the ability to go on trips around the world, to jump on planes just to go for the hell of it for a fucking meeting they could have done in Zoom. I mean, at the end of the day, they're not talking about making a good society where, you wouldn't have crime. You wouldn't need to jail people. You wouldn't be dealing with people desperate and trying to make different decisions that ends up putting them in jail if you actually spent money where the real needs are, on the people. Okay. Instead, they want to fatten it up for the managerial class, the academic class, the freaking people that are doing pretty goddamn well, and give them a leg up so that they won't bitch. And I hope between that number and the rich, all the poor people will be drowned out, because they'll be just fine and they can be further ignored. I remember I used to work in Philadelphia, and I was a director at Comcast. And I'm walking from the train station down to JFK Boulevard to where the Comcast Center was. And I look, and I've told the story so many times. There was a lump. It looked like a bundle of clothes laying on the sidewalk. It was fucking ice cold, frozen, horrible day. And as I got closer, I saw people, they weren't even deviating their eyes from their phone, just walking around, walking over, just going through. And I'm getting closer. I'm like, Jesus Christ, please tell me that's not a dead person. Please tell me that's not a fucking dead person. God, please tell me it's not a fucking dead person that froze to death on the fucking sidewalk. And the closer I got, the more my fucking worst nightmare was made true. And there was a motherfucking dead homeless person laying right there. And these people couldn't even be bothered. I ended up calling the police, the whole enchilada. Real fucked up situation. But that is what Kamala is feeding. This is the type of world the bourgeois little Democrats want to fucking create. They want to create one that ignores and blames and shits on the poor while simultaneously expanding the gap between them and the next class. And they're creating these classes because really there's two classes. There's the capitalists, the bourgeoisie, and then the working class. They're trying to subdivide the working class so we never come together. And that's exactly what the fuck she's doing.
Real quick before we end, I want to sneak in this topic because it basically is a continuation of what we're talking about, the corporate swine running this country and both parties. Obviously, you remember we covered the United Auto Workers strike extensively. We were on the picket lines for the first 3 weeks. I would dare to say we covered it more than any outlet in America, corporate or independent. And that was thanks to you for funding us to be there. Well, typically, you only really see strikes at around the end of a contract, but the UAW is now threatening to go on strike again, specifically against Stellantis, which is the one of the big three. Obviously, last time it was against all big three, Ford, Stellantis, and GM. But they're threatening to go on strike against Stellantis because Stellantis, shocker, is basically breaching the contract that was just signed and fought for. So I'll give you some. United Auto Workers Union is eyeing multiple U.S. strikes against French-Italian car maker Stellantis about a year after the national walkout against the big three, accusing Stellantis of breaking its contract promise. UAW President Shawn Fain Tuesday warned that several union local chapters were laying the groundwork for strikes. So they are, at the moment, potentially close to a strike authorization vote at least 28 locals that cover tens of thousands of workers. The strike would be over the UAW's grievances center around product and investment commitments made during the contract negotiations last fall, delays of planned multi-billion-dollar investment into a new battery plant in Belvidere, Illinois, and Stellantis' plan to move production of the Dodge Durango SUV out of the U.S. Have emerged as sticking points. Let's play some of Fain did a live stream last night.
We have 40 years of history showing that corporate America is more than happy to destroy communities, destroy lives, and destroy families for an extra percentage point on their profit margin. And if that wasn't enough, corporate America turns around and blames the devastation they have caused on the American worker. They blame us for daring to ask for a living wage, for health care, for a secure retirement, and the ability to spend some time with our family. They do this in hard times, kicking working class people while we're down. But corporations are also more than happy to do this in good times, and Wall Street rewards them for it. Over the past 25 years, Stellantis has closed or sold or idled 18 manufacturing facilities, killing tens of thousands of jobs and decimating communities and ripping families apart. There comes a time when we have to stand up. For our UAW family at Stellantis, that time is now. We can't stand by while this company tears communities apart. After billions in taxpayer bailouts and decades of support from American workers and consumers, Stellantis has declared war on the American working class.
So I feel mixed about this because on one end, he's absolutely right. And although I don't necessarily agree with the UAW's exuberant campaigning for Joe Biden, I don't begrudge the endorsement because at least Biden stayed out of the way of their strike. There's an endorsement, there's endorsing, and then there's working your tail off, which I don't think he's done anything for them. That they should be working so hard to reelect or elect Kamala Harris. But hey, guess what? I like Shawn Fain, but guess what? Do you hear Kamala Harris saying she's going to pass the PRO Act? Do you hear Kamala Harris even mentioning the PRO Act? The PRO Act would actually provide some teeth to prevent the Stellantises of corporate America from agreeing to contracts and then closing down factories. The PRO Act would actually make it actually provide some pain to these corporations for the union busting. I could go on and on and on. So yes, we can't just rely on the politicians, and that's why it's good that they, it seems, are going to go on strike again. But you're supporting a party right now that structurally is not fighting to actually give you a safety net, which would be something like the PRO Act.
Yeah, I hear a lot of people in the union movement and others that aren't willing to say the truth out loud because they're hoping that the shady deals and the willingness to work within the system and to willingness to support Biden or support Kamala or whatever will somehow or another, you know, it's playing 3D chess. You remember how they used to always say, Bernie's playing 3D chess here, man. You just don't understand. But 3D chess to go ahead and endorse the establishment. Right. Gotcha. You know, I'll be honest with you. I know what they're trying to do. At least I hear it on the back end. They think that they're going to get all these different contracts aligned to terminate at the same time so that they can have a general strike. I mean, that's what we've been calling for. And, you know, for all the people that think they could just have a general strike now, one of the tough things is you got to earn a general strike, meaning that you've got to prepare for it. You got to plan for it. And unions in America have been gutted for a long time. I mean, we don't even have most people that have any kind of real honest understanding of class in America or class in general, even the subject of class. Class has been baked out of society for so long. Most don't have any concept of what a working class struggle really is. I mean, they live it, but they don't understand the whole unity of the working class. They don't understand that at all. So the concept of operating outside of an atomized individual, what's good for me? What am I going to get a pay raise? Am I doing good? They can't envision what that looks like. It doesn't mean that they wouldn't go for it. It means that we have been so ripped away from working class consciousness and class struggle that we really, really do focus on things in a very, very like kind of childlike way, very unsophisticated way. And as a result of that, they've been able to just destroy any semblance of unity amongst working class through this quote unquote party system, the bi-party, you know, the duopoly, whatever. By doing that, they've splintered the working class, and it's there's no fixing that short of pulling away from the duopoly.
Absolutely. So we will keep you updated if there's another strike. This would not be as big as the strike of last year because that was against 3 companies. But Stellantis employs, you know, thousands and thousands of workers, particularly in Michigan and the Midwest. So if there's a strike, you know, I can't guarantee we'll be on the road again unless you fund us. But yeah, it's bittersweet because I like the fact that they're continuing to be aggressive. Again, it would be unusual to have a strike like not towards the end of the contract, but this is year 1 of the new contract. So good to be aggressive and not just take the economic, you know, ass beating, you know, quietly and happily. But, you know, you're supporting politicians right now that are not willing to fight for you. They'll say the right things. They'll say bad on Stellantis, you know, they have the right to strike, but they're not actually going to do anything to structurally give you the upper hand, which would be through legislation, which would be through not just civil penalty, criminal penalty, which in some other countries, it's actually criminal acts to do the union busting that goes on here every day. So we'll keep you updated if there is a strike, and obviously we'll try to cover it. Steve, oh, by the way, I totally agree, aggravated progressive, totally biased on my part. Jordan's book is shocking. And if you haven't gotten Jordan's book, it's still hot off the presses. It's only a month old, folks. So if you haven't gotten We the Poisoned, I mean, it's close enough to holiday time. Put it in your stocking stuffers. We the Poisoned. Definitely want to get the book out there, get the truth out there. This is a marathon, not a sprint. So I'm going to be pushing this book and promoting this book for a long time. Thank you to everyone who has gotten the book. You can get it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. It is in a lot of bookstores too, but your best bet is online. And like I said, the audio version will be out coming up on September 27th. So we'll definitely be doing more promotion for the audio version of the book coming out in about a week and a half now. Tell the people where they could find you, Steve.
Yes, please listen to our podcast, Macro and Cheese. It releases every Saturday morning at 8 a.m., brand new episode. But we've got over 300 episodes now. So please, you can go back through. They're all evergreen. They're not current event style podcasts. They're stuff to educate. And if you don't get bored with learning, you'll enjoy the hell out of them, I hope. It's from a working class perspective. We try our best to provide that analysis. And on Tuesday nights, we have what we call Macro and Chill, where we have a webinar where we all get together. We listen to the podcast in video format. Thank you for Kami John, who's in the audience here. He does great video work for it. It's a lot of fun. Please join us there. And we also have a book club on Thursday nights. Right now, we're going through Black Shirts and Reds by the man Parenti. So please check it out. Our Substack, Real Progressives, and there you go.
What kind of bullshit is that? When's my book on the radar and your book club?
Whenever you're ready to do it, we'd love to do one.
Oh, that's right. I couldn't do it that night.
Do one. That's right.
I couldn't do it. Yeah.
But we did invite you, and we not only did the two podcasts pretty much covering the stuff, but we also did a Macro and Chill that you were invited to be the star of the show. So,
yes, you're right.
Absolutely.
And I know I don't want you to lie to me because I know you haven't finished reading the book, but you have read some of it. You have read some of it. You have some read of it. Tell me your thoughts real quick.
It's freaking good. The thing I like the best about it is because I get to talk to you so much. I have an idea of a lot of the things, but then when I read it, it's like, holy shit, how deep down the rabbit hole does it go? And if you have this stuff and they're not suing you for it, tells me that you've got some good dirt there, some good substantiated dirt. And I would suggest that people read it and start taking some action.
Damn right. Damn right. Thank you, sir. Everybody, the links are in the description. Subscribe. And the podcast, I mean, you could be gardening and listening. You could be running, whatever, exercise, whatever. You could listen. So Steve works hard. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
You got to take care, everybody.
All right. Let's read some super chats. Donald James, member for 9 months. Will continue to support on-the-ground journalism. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Michael Cooper, member for 12 months. Fight the power message, gave us a heart. Sayla, I think I'm pronouncing that right, became a Status Coup member. Thank you so much for signing up, Sayla. Christina Suazo, 1999. Can Kamala answer any question that doesn't make it about her? I bought your book and T-shirt. Why, thank you. Thank you. And you want to know something? To me, we could say, I mean, it's not a secret that Donald Trump is a dangerous guy. It's not a secret that his policies are very dangerous, both economic and social. But at least we know what we're up against. I think you owe it to the American people to be honest, to actually explain what you're going to do. Because either you don't know what you're going to do, which kind of is concerning if you're running for president and you don't actually have a plan or any specifics, or you do know what you're going to do, but you don't want to tell people because you're just kind of doing this three-dimensional chess where, you want to win so bad that you don't want to piss off this constituency, or you don't want to piss off this demographic, or you don't want to alienate voters. So you're just not going to tell them. When somebody asks you, hey, can you give us two specifics on how you're going to lower prices? And your answer is, well, I grew up a middle-class kid, and hey, I grew up, people really were proud of their lawns. I mean, that's absurd. That's some crazy, crazy shit. What did I miss?
Well, one, I just want to say I grew up and never knew anyone who cared about their lawn. I only used weed whackers until I moved to Texas. It was the first time I used a lawnmower. But there were some super chats actually that I missed starring. So I'll just read them out loud here real quick.
Colin, when are the people going to see your face again?
Soon, hopefully. It's stuff. Life sometimes takes longer than you think it was.
I mean, Godzilla is that Godzilla? Who is that? Okay,
that's smiling Godzilla.
Godzilla's great, but the people demand Colin. Anyway, go ahead.
Soon, hopefully. First super chat from Call Me John for $5. Always a good day when you got Grumbazar and Chairman Chariton doing the damn thing. RP Book Club tomorrow.
Awesome.
Be safe out there, comrades. And then we have $2 from Tony D's music channel. Great job with Glenn and Mark last night.
Thank you, sir.
And
I will say, you know, I obviously have had my disagreements with Glenn Greenwald on a lot of things, but you know, these folks having me on is a really, really big thing because obviously corporate outlets are not having me on Flint. So I very much appreciate Glenn having me on. It seems he was very interested in my reporting. So I really appreciate him taking the time to have me on, as well as Mark Lamont Hill. Go on.
Last one, Call Me John again for $5. In 90 minutes over at Real Progressive's YouTube channel, we'll be playing the Macro and Chill video from last night. Steve and Daniel mowing down landlords and what have you. So
Awesome.
Make sure you guys check that out.
Head over to Real Progressive's YouTube channel for that. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Again, we are currently, I'm currently trying to plan an on-the-ground reporting trip to go through several swing states and just talk to the people, interview the people, show what's really going on. That's incredibly expensive, and we don't have any funding from the corporate overlords, the corporate scum, Wall Street, big banks, fossil fuckers, big pharma, big real estate, Silicon Valley, military-industrial complex. Our funding is you. It comes from you. So please, if you can, support us, statuscoup.com/join for as low as $5.